Right. A very good morning, everyone. Back here at the court here, Sodo Crown Court, just a few steps away. Today, there's a sitting going on, but it's the jurors are not in. And by default, we are not allowed to report that. So I'm not entering the court, but the court is in session. The reason being that there are still areas which the two sides of the bench have not resolved. They still have arguments which ordinarily it should not be before the jurors. So yesterday, when we were closing yesterday, right? Yeah, now in front of the court. So yesterday, when the judge was dismissing the jury, he told them that they are not required today. So even though I know what they'll be arguing about, but by restriction, we are not allowed to say it. And so that's why I'm not entering. But the lawyers are there, the two sides, the prosecution is there, the defense for Diezani or her brother, Bishop Doye Agame, and also the third defendant. Yesterday was really enthralling in court because when next time, let me say there are many angles. Next time somebody tells you the devil is in the detail, you better believe it. Because yesterday we have had since count eight. Count eight is the indictment that linked Olatimbo Anyide. That is where she comes in. There are 8 counts in this trial. Count number 8 specifically is the one that concerns Olatimbo Anyide, who is defendant number 3. And yesterday we had revelation. Sometimes battles that start in the bedroom, they go outside well beyond of the bedroom to areas they have ended up in a criminal court. Right. So what happened, what we were told yesterday is that we weren't just told among the devices, remember the prosecution is still the one on their feet. The Crown prosecutor was still on her feet, although she told us yesterday that she's likely to finish her case by tomorrow, Wednesday or Thursday. But that was just before the court went into session. But as the evidence continued, remember the Crown prosecution evidence, witness, a policeman who recovered some of the documents that were recovered from Olatimbo and this property when some of our premises were searched. Now, among the evidence, details, pages of petitions, which she wrote to her MP before this trial started. What actually triggered this trial, investigation by National Crime Agency, was that among the petitions, a letter she wrote to her MP in 2015 was to DT asking for help from harassment and intimidation from powerful men, powerful forces in Nigeria. And this letter which she wrote to her MP, this wasn't a letter written yesterday or 2 days ago or 2 years ago. This letter was written to her MP over 5 years ago. I think it was in 2015, asking for help. And in that letter, she detailed her experience, her marriage, how her marriage broke down to her former husband, and how trying to rebuild her life, she went to Nigeria. She was introduced she got into the oil sector. And while there in the oil sector, among the people she met is somebody you and I know very well, by Mr. Femi Otedola. In that letter that she wrote to her MP, detailing the reason why she's been harassed and under intimidation, why she was fearful for her life, she mentioned that this Mr. Otedola, Femi Otedola, the same billionaire Otedola, that they were in a relationship. They are proud to enter into a relationship. When he got to know Otedola, Otedola told him he was in an unhappy marriage. So the two of them gelled together. They started their relationship. And after that, along the line during their relationship, she discovered that Otedola was controlling. So she made attempts to end the relationship, and that Otedola told her then that no woman has ever left him, and that if she tries to be the first one, then she will feel the consequences. In this letter, which she wrote to her MP, she detailed all this. That's why I said the next time you hear somebody say, the devil is in the detail, don't take it with a pinch of salt. So in this letter, which she wrote in 2015, she then narrated how after leaving Otedola, that in fact, not only that they were lovers, that they were in a relationship, she mentioned in that letter also that herself, Olatimbo Ayinde, and her lover then, Mr. Femi Otedola, they actually also formed a business. They were in business together. And that after she got to know that this man, this her lover, was a controlling man, and she tried to leave, that Otedola wasn't happy. And like I mentioned before, she wrote in that letter, Olatimbo Ayinde is a very meticulous somebody from what we are seeing, because all the documents that were recovered in our various properties, they are being brought to court here. The Crown is using them as evidence to say, yes, your indictment for trying to bribe a public official is a crime in the United Kingdom. So these documents were retrieved from her property. One of them is that where she wrote chronology of event memoir. This was part of what was recovered. So in this letter, she narrated how after her marriage broke down with her former husband, Mr. Ayinde, who went back to Nigeria, she had to bring up her two boys, their two children, by herself. And that in the course of return of going to Nigeria, she got into the oil business, met Mr. Otedola, they became close, they eventually became lovers. She put this in the letter she wrote to her MP. Her MP, member of parliament, for probably those who are not in the UK, is like your House of Rep member, House of Representative member, or your senator, which people often run to when things are going wrong. So she detailed everything to say they were lovers and they formed a business together. But when Otedola, when she noticed that, this man who said he was in an unhappy marriage, probably it was because, this is the true person, and that he was a controlling man, and that after saying if she wanted to end it, and Otedola threatened her, told her that, look, no woman has ever left me. You won't be the number one. And that then she eventually broke the relationship anyway. And that this was when our ordeal started, that Otedola made every attempt. Everywhere she went for business in Nigeria, Otedola was ahead of her, trying to stop, including using EFCC to persecute her. She put all this later down. Olatimbo Ayinde herself is no mean person, because she has connections. She reached out to the then vice president of President Muhammadu Buhari to say Otedola was harassing her, asking for help, asking for intervention. We've often heard that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, but this from a letter, we have never known that even how hell hath no fury than even a man that is called. This is what Olatimbo revealed in the letter. Remember, this letter wasn't written originally for this trial. It wasn't written to this court. It was written to our MP in 2015. It was when the police and the National Crime Agency officials were searching her property that they recovered this. And some of the email, apart from the hard copy of the letter, there were also email in effort to seek justice or to find herself being shielded, that she even made attempts. She saw the late President Muhammadu Buhari, and she told him that she is under harassment. She gave recommendation that the oil industry in Nigeria is an abyss of corruption. These were contained in the letter which she wrote. These letters were displayed in this court yesterday. And like I said earlier, the reason why I'm not in today is that the lawyers, the two sides of the bench, they still have arguments. So normally when such an issue is happening, the judge will give them the opportunity to resolve it among themselves. So they're having legal arguments, the lawyers, both the Crown and the defense barristers for the three defendants, they're having arguments right now, but we are not allowed to report on that because when the jury is not on seat, we cannot report on it. So, but back to what happened yesterday. So this letter, she detailed how Otedola went every nook and corner in Nigeria, including a bank, that even a bank account, Olatimbo has, she has five organizations, five companies, and then two of the companies, money they paid for to lift petroleum. All these were displayed in the letter she wrote to her MP. Remember, this letter was not originally written to any authority in the UK. It was to her MP, detailing, chronologizing everything that her former lover, Mr. Femi Otedola, was doing to harass her according to what he had promised. And the title of her letter was Harassment and Sexual Intimidation. So she wrote this letter down to say, look, I ended the relationship with Otedola. In fact, she said Otedola left her business, the business which they own together, with over $1 million debt, and that she has paid off that business debt by herself. And that Otedola said, look, anywhere she go in Nigeria, that he was going to be there. EFCC were used not only to persecute her, they stopped her bank account, they put a restriction on her bank account. She said that was to liquidate her business so that they could then buy her business, at a giveaway price. So Olatimbo, and they meticulously put all these things down in the letter she wrote. Even when she met President Muhammadu Buhari, probably tomorrow I'll be able to give you the date. She met President Muhammadu Buhari then in 2015. She even met former President Jonathan, but that was in April 2015. She said in the letter also, which she wrote down, because remember, the devil is in the detail. This woman, this defendant is very thorough. She detailed all, in fact, she had a diary every time something happened between her and anybody. She had everything down, both in hard copy and also in email. So she detailed the date that she met former President Goodluck Jonathan. That was in April of 2015, that Jonathan had lost the election then, as we know, PDP had lost, and that President Goodluck Jonathan said, he was sorry because by then, he was on his way out of the villa. So there wasn't much he could do, because he said Otedola was a kingmaker, according to her, that Otedola was boasting that, look, he got rid of Jonathan, and that anything that he wanted, that anywhere he wanted, not just EFCC, but that DSS also were being used to harass her, all because she ended their love relationship, and that Femi Otedola had told her that no woman had ever left me. If you try to be the number one, you are going to see. And that is what he did. And it was Otedola that can you just even imagine that it was even Otedola who became an informant for the National Crime Agency, that in National Crime Agency here, which were the one that investigated this case, this trial for over 10 years. Remember, before it came to trial, they started this investigation as far back, I think, 2015 or even before, that it was Otedola that she is known as informant number one in NCA circle. So that all this was to get back to her. But that she did mention that Otedola, after ending their relationship, he left a business debt of over $1 million. I'll be able to give you the exact figure tomorrow. He left the business with over $1 million in debt, and that she has rebuilt that business and paid off, settled that money, or that Otedola was making her life a living here. That was why she made attempt not just to see President Goodluck Jonathan. Then she saw him. She saw late President Buhari himself, and also among the witness, the evidence which were presented, also was a series of text exchange messages between her and the then APC chieftain, current President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and also somebody who became very, very close to her, Prince Momo. Over 100 text messages. Of course, remember, when you are under investigation, they collect all your devices. So these were private messages which were never intended for a third person. There was a time among the series of text messages between her and Prince Momo, which were displayed yesterday. This all happened in 2015. This is of exchanges when Emmanuel Ibe Kachuku was made the GMD. In fact, she said then that the oil industry was really shocked that Kachuku ended up as GMD before his elevation to become Minister of State, that Kachuku brothers were known in the oil industry as kickback experts. But that because they worked in consonance with Femi Otedola, they had it just how they wanted, and that was how they were able to twist the government. That after Jonathan left, it was Emmanuel Ibe Kachuku, that became the GMD and eventually the Minister of State for Petroleum. And don't forget also that in an earlier evidence presented by the Crown, there was that 1 billion naira that Kachuku's younger brother, Jumebi, asked her to provide. She had everything. She said when this thing happened, when this thing was happening, that she didn't know it was a plot, a grand plot by Otedola, that when she was approached to come and give bribes so as to get contracts in the oil industry, she informed Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, then APC, just a chieftain, that he told her to play along. She detailed this in a letter. She detailed this also in email. She's very, very thorough. Devil is in the detail. Never take it with a pinch of salt. So she said she played along. And after transferring that 1 billion, hoping that Prince Momo, who was sacked as the MD of PPMC, was going to be restored, and that it wasn't restored, and then she wanted that 1 billion back. That was when the then barrister Festus Keyamo wrote her a letter to say, you're trying to blackmail our client, Mr. Jumebi Kachuku, and that the condition for which they were going to refund that 1 billion naira was for her to agree that it was for a landed property in Abuja. And she said, look, I am not into this. I don't know anything about any landed property. And then she went, reported the matter to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu then, and that Tinubu told her, they showed these exchanges. There were text messages between her and Tinubu, text messages between her and the chief of staff to former Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. How Osinbajo sent his then chief of staff, Wale Ipaye, to London to meet her, to hear her side of the story. So that Asiwaju told her then that, look, Buhari, that he knows, is not into any kickback, that she should demand her money back from Jumebi Kachuku. So that was when she requested for a 1 billion naira back from Jumebi, and that before they eventually agreed, probably when they then saw that this woman too had a longer reach, they transferred that 1 billion back in 3 installments to our account. So the evidence, the Crown, they are hoping to finish to close their case tomorrow. That's what the prosecutor told us yesterday, that she's likely to close their case tomorrow or Thursday. But like I said, there's a sitting going on, the trial is on, but the lawyers, they are still having arguments. If they do not agree this morning, the judge is going to make a ruling. There is a point of law which they are still arguing about. This is week number 7, but they're still yesterday when the judge dismissed the jurors after 3 to say, look, today, take it a day off after they had left, because what happens when the jurors are not there, we are not allowed to say it. So that's why I'm not going inside the court today, but they are right there behind me inside the courtroom number 2 arguing, because they still, I cannot tell you what they are arguing about, but some of it was mentioned yesterday. It is only things which are said in front of the jurors which we are allowed to talk in public. Maybe after the trial, there will be permission to say that, but for now, that is what is happening. So, like I mentioned yesterday, Otedola might be miles, thousands of miles away in Nigeria, but yesterday, his name was all over the screen in this court. And that was because of the letter that Olatimbo Ayinde had written to our MP in 2015 to say she was being harassed. She has been, they have mentioned that Otedola promised that, look, if she came to Nigeria, they were going to kidnap her, rape her. So she was afraid for her life until Asiwaju stepped in then. I think she then had the boldness to go to Nigeria briefly, but at one time when she went to Nigeria, as soon as she knew that Otedola was aware, she quickly made her way back to the UK. And that is how this case eventually came to the open. So this letter, we wouldn't have known, but she made it clear to the MP that, look, Otedola and I, we were in a relationship. I wanted to end it. He told me then, before they entered their relationship, Otedola said he was in an unhappy marriage, and because she too had left her marriage because she had suffered domestic abuse, she wrote all this down. These are not telephone conversations. She detailed this in the letter to her MP, that her former husband, they had 2 boys together, domestic abuse. That was why she had left. And having gone to Nigeria to rebuild her life, got into the oil industry, met Otedola, they became lovers. And when she said, okay, I want to move on, discovering that Otedola was a controlling man, and Otedola said, no woman has ever tried to leave me. Don't try to be the number one. So this was how we now know that hell is not only heart no fury, like a woman scorned. Even a man, even if that man is a billionaire, hell had no fury. And things that happen inside the bedroom, they sometimes find their way into a sort of crime court. They sometimes get into the ears of National Crime Agency. They sometimes find their way to the headquarters of EFCC. Olatimbo Ayinde had details of when the name of Magu, a former EFCC acting chairman, now we know why his name was presented 3 times before the Senate, because he said Otedola is so powerful that he did not want Ibrahim Magu, to be confirmed as EFCC. So he kept there. That's why now we know, those of us who were in this court yesterday, but these were in the letter she wrote to her MP. Do not forget, the Crown has not finished. There has been no cross-examination. The Crown is still the one on their feet. The Crown prosecutor has said she might finish their case tomorrow, but today is off day. And like I said earlier, they are inside courtroom number 2 behind me. And the reason I'm not inside is because whatever they say there, we are not allowed to mention it in public, but I know part of what they are arguing about. So there is still contention between the 2 sides of the bench as to what can be used as evidence, what can be, how this trial will go. Even though we are in week number 7, it is still it is still going like a pendulum. All that was said, all that was presented in the past couple of days, the defense, they have not done cross-examination. It is still the Crown trying to prove their case that Olatimbo bribed a public official, which is a crime. I think the Bribery Act of 1977, I'll check all that and probably bring it to you tomorrow. The Bribery Act of 1977 is one of the two legislations which this trial is based upon. Yesterday, she was in court. She was jovial. She was there with Diezani. Both of them were listening, following from morning about 10:20 when the jurors came in. We had a tea break until after 3 when the judge dismissed the jurors to say, you can go home. That's all for it today. We don't need you today. Come back on Wednesday. Both of them were there in the dock, sitting, listening, and watching all the details. So next time you hear somebody tell you the devil is in the detail, even Olatimbo had details, recommendations she made to President Buhari to say how to rid the NNPC of corruption. This was as far back as 2015. All these documents were retrieved from her apartment when the NCA, when the police were searching. So the Crown needed that document to prove their case. And don't forget, at the beginning of this trial, the judge told them that it is your case to prove. The defense do not have to prove anything, but you, the Crown, you must prove that they tried to bribe a public official, which is a criminal act under UK Law, Bribery Act of 1977, and one other legislation. So the Crown, they are throwing everything out, presenting it to the jury so that the jury will be sure. And like I said, don't forget, the defense, they have not had the time to do cross-examination of this evidence, so when it resumes tomorrow, I'll let you know. But that is how we have today, week number 7, off day for the jury today, while the lawyers still try to. And like I said, if they do not agree among themselves in the afternoon, the judge is going to make a ruling as to the direction of this trial. So that is where we are. And then tomorrow I'll give you further updates.